My name is Mia Sterling, and to my family I was a stain they kept hidden behind heavy silk curtains. Hurry up, Mia, the guests are arriving. My mother, Eleanor Sterling's sharp voice crackled over the intercom. I was in the basement of the Sterling fashion house, surrounded by bolts of fabric, stray needles, and spools of thread. A tiny droplet of blood welled up on my finger where I had just pricked myself, but I didn't have time to stop. I was finishing the final hem on the gown my older sister, Isabelle, was wearing to the Met Gala tonight. The gown was magnificent. Deep midnight blue velvet, embroidered with silver threads that looked like constellations. I had worked on it for 3 weeks straight, barely sleeping. When I brought the dress upstairs, the elevator doors opened, and I stepped into the glittering world my family inhabited. Crystal chandeliers, champagne towers, and the scent of expensive perfume. Isabelle was standing there, fixing her hair in a gilded mirror. She snatched the dress from me as if I were handing her a dirty towel. "There's a loose thread here, Mia," she scolded, fumbling to even hold the heavy fabric correctly. "Be more careful next time. Now go, leave through the back door. If the Vogue photographers see you standing next to me, they'll think we're lowering our standards." My mother nodded in agreement, sipping her drink. "Yes, Mia, and please don't come to the office tomorrow. We have major investors coming. We don't want you distracting them with your presence." Without a word, I slipped out the back exit, past the overflowing dumpsters. That night, I sat in my tiny studio apartment, eating instant noodles, watching the TV. Isabelle was on the red carpet, wearing the dress I had bled over. A reporter thrust a microphone in her face. "Isabelle, this design is breathtaking. Where did you find the inspiration?" Isabelle flashed her practiced, charming smile. "Oh, it just came to me. When I was in Paris, gazing at the stars, I sketched this immediately. It is a reflection of my soul." The world applauded. I turned off the TV knowing full well that Isabelle couldn't even draw a straight line, let alone sketch a gown. But the truth was, Sterling House was in trouble. They looked rich on the outside, but inside they were hollow. Sales were plummeting. Their vision was outdated. The only thing keeping them afloat were my designs, the ones Isabelle slapped her name on. Then came the day that changed everything. New York Fashion Week was approaching. Sterling House needed a massive investor to avoid bankruptcy. But the investor had one condition. He would only sign the check if Elias Vaughan, the world's most ruthless and respected fashion critic, gave his seal of approval to their new winter collection. Elias Vaughan was no ordinary critic. He could look at a garment and tell you the designer's mood when they stitched it. He could smell a lie from a mile away. My father, Richard Sterling, came down to the basement, sweating through his suit. "Mia," he said, his voice desperate for the first time, "we need you. Isabelle can't do this. Elias Vaughan cannot be fooled. You need to create a collection that will put our family name in the history books." "And who gets the credit?" I asked quietly. "Isabelle." "It's business, Mia," my mother snapped, stepping out from behind him. "Isabelle is the face. You are the hands. Everyone has their place. If you don't do this, we lose everything. Do you want us on the street?" They guilt-tripped me, like always. "Fine," I said, a strange glint in my eye that they were too panicked to notice. "I'll do it. I will create the best work of my life." For the next 2 weeks, I locked myself in the basement. I designed a collection I called The Phantom. It was complex, it was dark, and I constructed it using a stitching technique that was nearly extinct, something I had learned from antique French tailoring manuals. I built the collection, and I set my trap. The night of the runway show, the entire NYC elite was there. In the front row, wearing dark sunglasses and holding a leather notebook, sat Elias Vaughan. His face was stone cold. The lights dimmed, the music swelled, and the models walked. The clothes were breathtaking, silk that moved like water, structures that seemed to defy gravity. The audience was mesmerized. When Isabelle walked out for the final bow, wearing the showstopper piece, the entire hall stood up in applause. Isabelle stood center stage, waving, accepting bouquets of flowers. My parents were beaming, practically glowing with pride. Suddenly, Elias Vaughan stood up. He raised a hand. The music cut. The applause died instantly. Elias walked slowly toward the stage. He demanded a microphone. "Miss Sterling?" Elias's deep voice boomed through the hall. "In my 30-year career, I have rarely seen work like this." Isabelle blushed, feigning modesty. "Thank you, Elias. It was my hardest work yet." Elias murmured, stepping onto the runway and touching the fabric of her sleeve. "This specifically, the stitching on this jacket. This is the invisible loop stitch, isn't it? It hasn't been used since the 1850s. It is incredibly complex. One wrong needle entry and the entire fabric tears." Isabelle's face stiffened. A bead of sweat sparkled on her forehead. Yes, she stammered. "Absolutely. It was very risky." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Interesting, because in this technique, the thread is woven from the inside out in a specific pattern. Can you tell me, where did you tie the anchor knot? Is it on the left seam or the right? Because if I pull it right now, we will know." Isabelle froze. She didn't know what an anchor knot was. She looked frantically at my parents in the front row. It was part of the creative process. I don't recall exactly." Isabelle's lie was unraveling. Elias laughed. It was a cold, terrifying sound. "You can't recall because you didn't make this, Isabelle," Elias said, his voice dropping an octave. "In fact, I'd wager you've never threaded a needle in your life." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Cameras zoomed in on Isabelle's panicked face. "This is a lie!" my father shouted, standing up. "My daughter is a genius." "Sit down," Elias barked. He turned back to the audience. "This stitching technique, this is the signature of The Needle, an anonymous design blogger I have been following for 2 years. She posts videos of her work but never her face." Elias pulled out his phone, and a video projected onto the massive screen behind the stage. It showed a pair of hands sewing the very dress Isabelle was wearing, and on the wrist of those hands was a small, distinct tattoo, a tiny pair of scissors. "And if my information is correct," Elias said, scanning the room, "those hands are in this building tonight." His eyes drifted to the wings of the stage, where I was watching from the shadows. "Come out," Elias commanded. I hesitated, then slowly stepped into the light. I was wearing my plain black t-shirt and jeans. The scissor tattoo on my wrist caught the spotlight. Isabelle stepped back as if I were a disease. My parents looked like ghosts. I walked to the center of the stage and stood before Elias. "Is the anchor knot on the left?" Elias asked me. "No," I said, my voice clear in the microphone. "There is no anchor knot in this technique. It is a continuous loop. If you cut the thread, the whole garment opens. It relies on tension and trust, not lies." Elias smiled, a genuine, respectful smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elias announced, "let me introduce you to the true talent of Sterling House, Mia Sterling." The applause was deafening, louder than before. The investor, who had been sitting next to my father, stood up and walked straight toward the stage, ignoring my parents completely. "Miss Mia," the investor said, reaching up to shake my hand, "I have no interest in frauds, but I would very much like to do business with The Needle. Are you ready to launch your own label?" I looked down at my parents and Isabelle. They looked small, scared, and powerless. The same people who had kept me in a basement for years. "Yes," I smiled. "I am ready." The next day, the headlines read, "The Fall of the Sterling Empire, the Fabric of Lies Unravels." Today, I run my own fashion house in New York. My name is on the door, and my family. They still come to my shows, but they don't get front row seats anymore. They buy tickets and sit in the back, watching what the genius can really do.